Wait, pause for a second. Something quiet, something almost invisible has just shifted, and you probably felt it before you even opened this video. That small, strange tug in your chest that came out of nowhere tonight. That feeling of being thought about by someone who isn't here. You brushed it off, maybe blamed it on the weather, on being tired, on overthinking again. But somewhere out there, in a room full of noise and laughter and people who don't really know them the way you do, your person just heard your name leave somebody else's mouth. And it landed differently than they expected. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just one sentence from a third person, said casually, almost in passing, and it cracked something open inside them that they had been carefully holding shut for weeks. If this message speaks to your heart, comment, "I receive this love," like the video, and subscribe for more. Now stay with me here, because the moment I am about to walk you through is smaller than you think, and that's exactly why it mattered so much. Picture the night the way it actually was for them. Not the version you imagine when your mind runs wild at 2 a.m. The real version. They were out. Maybe a friend's place, maybe a bar with dim yellow lighting, maybe somebody's living room with a half-finished bottle on the coffee table and a playlist nobody picked playing in the background. They walked in tired. They had been carrying something for a while, mostly, even if they wouldn't admit that out loud. They came out tonight because being alone with their own thoughts was getting too loud, and they wanted noise. They wanted distraction. They wanted to feel like a person again instead of someone quietly haunted by a name they keep trying not to say. And for the first hour, it almost worked. They laughed at something dumb. They had a drink. They felt the edges of themselves soften a little. And then it happened. Someone, a friend, maybe a cousin, maybe just an acquaintance who pays more attention than people give them credit for, looked over at them and said your name. Not in a heavy way. Not like an accusation. Just a question, or a comment, the kind of thing a person says when they putting two and two together. Something like, "Hey, whatever happened with you and her?" Or, "I always thought you two had something real, you know that, right?" Or, the one that hit hardest. Honestly, she was the only one who actually got you. And there it was. The sentence they didn't see coming. Something about this moment felt different for them, even though on the surface, nothing about it should have. People have asked them about you before. People have made comments. They handled it. They shrugged it off, changed the subject, taken another sip, smiled the smile that doesn't reach their eyes. But this time the words didn't slide off. This time the words stuck. And somewhere underneath the laughter and the music and the conversations happening around them, a quiet voice inside them said, "Oh no." Because the third person didn't say anything they didn't already know. They said something your person had been refusing to look at directly. And hearing it out loud, in someone else's voice, made it real in a way their own thoughts never quite could. Stay with this, because there's a deeper emotional layer here that I don't want you to miss. When somebody else speaks the truth we've been hiding from ourselves, it doesn't feel like new information. It feels like being caught. It feels like a mirror got held up at an angle we weren't ready for. And that's exactly what your person felt sitting there with that drink in their hand. Caught. Not by the third party, by themselves. So they did what people do when something hits too close. They went quiet. Not in a way anyone else really noticed. They nodded. They smiled. Maybe they made a small joke to deflect, the kind of joke that lands flat and everybody politely lets go of. And then they reached for their drink again. A little sooner than the last one. A little fuller. They weren't trying to get drunk. They were trying to dilute something. There's a difference, and anyone who has ever loved someone they walked away from knows exactly what I mean. Because here's the thing your person has been avoiding. They told themselves a story about you. About what you were, about what you weren't, about what they needed and what they thought they didn't need. They told themselves that letting things drift was the mature choice. The right choice. The clean break that wasn't really a break, just a slow fading. They convinced themselves that the silence between you was peaceful instead of painful. That not reaching out was strength instead of fear. They built a careful little fortress in their head, brick by brick, made out of reasons. And tonight, with one sentence from a third person, somebody knocked a brick out of the wall and they could suddenly see right through it. And this is where things quietly began to shift. They tried to keep the conversation going around them. They tried to laugh at the next joke. But their head wasn't there anymore. Their body was in that room. Their mind was somewhere else. Their mind was on a Tuesday night that probably meant nothing to anyone but the two of you. The way you laughed at something they said that wasn't even that funny. The way you looked at them when you thought they weren't paying attention. The exact tone of your voice when you said their name. They hadn't let themselves think about that voice in a while. They had been very careful about that. And now the door they kept closed was halfway open and a memory was walking right through it. Then a song came on. I am not going to tell you which one because honestly, it doesn't matter. You'll know when you hear it. It might already be playing in your head right now. It was a song that had nothing to do with you, technically. Nobody made it your song. You never danced to it. It wasn't on a playlist either of you ever shared. But for some reason, in that moment, it sounded like you. The way the words were arranged. The slow ache of the chorus. The tired voice of whoever was singing. Their hand tightened around the glass without them meaning to. They stared at a spot on the table that didn't have anything on it. And inside their chest, something they had been holding in a tight fist started to loosen, and they hated how much they didn't want it to stop. What happens next isn't loud, but it changes everything. Because in that exact moment, a thought rose up in them, uninvited, the way the truest thoughts always do. The thought was simple. It was almost embarrassing in how plain it was. The thought was, I miss her. Or, I miss him. Or just, I miss them. No long speech attached. No justification. No analysis. Just that small, naked admission they'd been refusing to make to themselves for so long. And once it was said inside them, it couldn't be unsaid. You can drink past a lot of things, but you can't drink past a sentence that already crossed the line in your own mind. They got up to step outside, said something about needing air, took their phone with them, even though they had no plan to use it. Out in the cold, or the warm humid dark, or the buzzing parking lot light, they stood there and breathed in slowly and looked at the sky like maybe it would tell them what to do. And in the silence outside, away from the music, the third party's words came back. The exact phrase. They turned it over in their head. They asked themselves the question they had been avoiding. Why did hearing her name from someone else hit like that? And here's where understanding slowly begins. It hit like that because the third party said it the way it actually was, without all the careful softening your person had been doing in their own head. They had been telling themselves you were one thing. The third party reminded them you were something else. They had been telling themselves the connection was small, manageable, replaceable. The third party, without even meaning to, named what they had been pretending not to know. That you weren't replaceable. That what you had with them wasn't something you find on a Tuesday in a crowd. That walking away from it had a cost they had been quietly paying every day without admitting it was a cost. And the worst part, or maybe the most beautiful part, depending on how you look at it, is that they didn't get angry about being called out. They didn't argue with the third party. They didn't even push back internally. They just sat with it. Because somewhere underneath all the pride and all the distance, They had been waiting for somebody to say it out loud. They had been waiting to be caught. We hat, as humans. When we know we're hiding something from ourselves, we leave little doors open, hoping someone we trust will walk through and tell us the truth so we don't have to face it alone. That's what tonight was for them. A door they left open without realizing it, and someone walked through it carrying your name. If this resonates, let it settle in you for a moment. You don't need to force anything. Just notice the way your body is responding to this, because the body remembers what the mind tries to forget, and yours has been carrying a lot. Now back to them, still standing outside, phone in hand, the kind of quiet around them that makes a person feel small in a useful way. Their thumb hovered. You know the hover I am talking about. That hesitant, half-aware drift toward your name in their contacts, the message thread they reread more times than they ever tell anyone. They didn't open it. Not yet. But they thought about it. They thought about what they say. They thought about whether they had the right to say anything at all. They thought about how it might land for you. They thought about how long it had been. They thought about the version of you that exists in their memory, and they wondered, with a small clutch of fear they barely recognized, whether you were the same, whether you still felt anything, whether the door on your side was still open even a crack. And this is the part they still trying to understand. Because when they imagined you not feeling anything anymore, when they let themselves picture you fully done, fully past it, fully somewhere else, something inside them protested in a voice that was way too loud for someone who supposedly didn't care. That protest scared them, because that protest told them everything. You don't grieve the absence of something that didn't matter. You don't ache over the silence of someone who was never the right one. The body does not lie about this. The chest does not lie. The 11:47 p.m. Tightness behind the ribs does not lie. They had been calling it stress. They had been calling it being tired. They had been calling it everything except its real name. Its real name is you. They put the phone away without sending anything. Don't be discouraged by that. Stay with this, because what's happening inside them right now matters more than what's happening on the screen. People rarely move from realization to action in a single night. The realization itself is the move. The realization is the thing that, once it settles in, slowly rearranges every choice that comes after it. They walked back inside. They sat down. They picked up the drink, but this time they didn't really drink it. They just held it. They listened to the people around them and they felt, maybe for the first time in months, the strange dissonance of being in a room full of company and still feeling like the one person they actually wanted to talk to wasn't there. Maybe I let go too quickly. The thought came in like a draft under a closed door. They didn't push it away this time. They let it sit on the table next to them, almost like a guest. Why does this still feel unfinished? That one came right after. They didn't have an answer. They didn't need one. The questions themselves were the answer. You don't ask those kinds of questions about something that's actually over. You ask them about something that's still alive inside you. Now I want you to hear this part carefully, because this is where the real shift happens, and I don't want it to slip past you. The shift wasn't a decision. The shift wasn't a plan. The shift was a softening. For a long time, your person had been holding their version of the story very tightly. The story where they were fine. The story where you didn't matter as much as you did. The story where the timing was wrong, the circumstances were wrong, you were wrong, they were wrong, everything was wrong, so the silence was right. Tonight, sitting in that chair, that story loosened in their hands. They didn't drop it, but they stopped gripping it. And once a story is held loosely, the truth has room to breathe between the sentences. The truth, in their case, was this. They had been protecting themselves from you, not because you hurt them, but because you mattered. People run from the things that matter when they don't trust themselves to handle them. They had been running. They had been calling it space. They had been calling it growth. They had been calling it not being ready. But underneath all the polite words, what it really was, and they knew it now, was fear. Fear of how much you saw them. Fear of how known they felt around you. Fear of being loved by someone who actually paid attention, after a lifetime of being half loved by people who didn't. And tonight, in front of strangers and friends and a half-finished drink, that fear got named. Not by them. By somebody else. Somebody who looked at them and casually said the thing they couldn't say to themselves. And once a fear is named out loud, even by accident, even by a third person, it loses some of its grip on you. You can't go back to pretending you don't know it. There's a verse that quietly came to my mind as I was thinking about this moment for them, and I'll only share it once because I don't want to crowd this with anything that doesn't fit. Proverbs says that the heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. Tonight, somebody who wasn't a stranger, but wasn't deeply close either, accidentally touched the bitterness your person had been hiding, and in doing so, accidentally pointed them back toward the joy they had walked away from. That joy has your name on it. They know that now. If you felt this shift too, even just a little, you already understand what I am saying without me having to explain it. So let's talk about what comes next, gently. Because I know what you really wondering. You wondering if this means they reach out. You wondering when. You wondering if you should reach out first. You wondering if any of this is real, or if you making yourself believe something just because you needed to hear it tonight. Here's the honest answer. The reaching out part is not the part that matters most. I know that's not what you wanted me to say, but hear me out. The reason it's not the most important part is because what's happening inside them right now is bigger than a text. A text is a moment. What's happening inside them is a slow undoing of every reason they used to keep their distance. Every brick is loosening. They might reach out tonight and not know what to say. They might wait a week, or two, until the words feel honest enough to send. They might do something smaller first. A quiet repost, a quiet like, an out of nowhere question that sounds casual but isn't. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that the wall is no longer a wall. It's a wall with cracks in it, and cracks let light through, both directions. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to chase this. You don't have to engineer it or rush it or test it. The work tonight wasn't yours. It was theirs. And it happened whether you knew about it or not. It happened in a room where you weren't even sitting, where someone said your name and the temperature in your person's chest changed, and they didn't have anywhere to hide from it. So what do you do with all of this? You let it land softly. You don't grip it. You don't post about it. You don't panic. Check your phone every 9 minutes for the next 3 days. You let yourself feel quietly seen by the universe, because that's what's actually happening here. Something rearranged itself tonight, and you allowed to feel it without needing proof. The proof will come in its own time, in its own form, and probably when you not bracing for it. And when it comes, whether it's tomorrow, or next week, or in a month when you finally stopped waiting and started living again, you already know how to respond. You won't need a script. You won't need advice. You won't need to perform anything. Because the version of you that they going to come back to is not the anxious version that's been refreshing their old messages. It's the version of you that quietly accepted what they couldn't yet, and kept your heart honest while theirs caught up. That's the real magic of this whole thing. While they were out there running, you were here, getting quieter and clearer and more rooted. The distance wasn't punishment. The distance was preparation. They needed time to hear someone else say the truth they couldn't admit. You needed time to stop needing them to say it. Both of you were being walked toward this moment from different sides of the same long hallway. Tonight, a door at the end of that hallway cracked open. They were standing in front of it now, blinking, a little shaken, holding a drink they were not drinking, listening to a song that sounds like you. And what they were beginning to realize now is something they can't walk away from anymore. Not this time.